Hello, today we'll be talking about our client Stella and 3 theoretical frameworks we can use to treat her.
For some background, Stella is a 23-year-old white heterosexual woman currently living in Boston, Massachusetts. She recently graduated from the College of New Jersey with a degree in fashion merchandising and decided to move to Boston to pursue her career. Stella has been having trouble adjusting to independent living since she has lived with her mother her entire life before moving. Additionally, Stella has recently gone through a breakup with her long-term boyfriend Grayson, who cheated on her and broke up with her right before graduation. Since moving to Boston, she has experienced intense feelings of loneliness and anxiety regarding her new lifestyle and sudden isolation from the people that she has spent her entire life around. Stella is currently unemployed and is having trouble finding a job. She is also in severe credit card debt because she excessively spends money that she does not have. She reports feelings of low self-worth and stress that cause her to seek validation through men. Stella is seeking counseling to assist her in transitioning to adulthood in a more stable manner, relieve her emotional distress surrounding her loneliness and finances, and to practice healthy coping mechanisms.
Stella grew up in a middle-class household and lived with her mother and older brother her entire life up until her move. Her parents divorced when she was younger and is not close with her father, but her mother has always been supportive of her career pursuits and wants the best for her. Stella's brother is currently a financial executive for a large company based in New York City, and her mother often boasts about his accomplishments to her friends and family. Stella's mother was recently diagnosed with breast cancer, and treatment has made it difficult to work, resulting in financial strain. Stella has refused to let her mother finance her move to Boston and insisted on being independent, but has had trouble adjusting to her new lifestyle since she has never had to think about money or budgeting. Additionally, Stella has grown up surrounded by the same people and has had many long-term relationships at home in New Jersey. She would spend a lot of time going out and having fun with her best friends and boyfriend, and she felt her life was stable and comfortable. However, when she found out that Grayson cheated on her and broke up with her, she felt like she needed to escape and reinvent herself in a new place.
Stella's transition to adulthood has had the most impact on her well-being. Before moving to Boston, she dreamed about starting a successful career in fashion merchandising while spending her free time with her new friends and with her loving, trustworthy boyfriend. However, her life is not what she has pictured it to be, and she is now anxious about what the future holds. Her most recent tipping point was discovering that in order to afford her rent bill this month and to pay off her credit card bills, she would have to dip into her savings. Stella knows that once she starts to spend her savings, she will barely have anything left to her name. Additionally, she finds that many of her college friends seem to be enjoying fun-filled lives with stable jobs, and it is hard for her to stay in contact with her old friends due to feelings of inadequacy and embarrassment.
As a result of having to adjust to new beginnings, Stella finds herself engaging in destructive behaviors. She spends most of her time scrolling through social media and comparing herself to peers. Stella also frequents her ex-boyfriend's social media to see what he is up to. It is difficult for her to get out of bed and take care of herself the way she used to. She no longer has the energy to put outfits together or do her hair and makeup, so she often spends all day in pajamas lounging around her in her apartment. When she is feeling low, she shops online and purchases unnecessary items to feel better. Once the orders arrive, however, she admits having feelings of guilt and shame and feels worse than she did before. Furthermore, when Stella does find it in herself to go out, she tends to gravitate towards the local bar. Here, she drinks heavily and converses with random men she meets. She claims that she partakes in casual sex very often. It is possible that she is using these hookups to fill the void that has been created from the combination of missing her ex-boyfriend, having very little friends, and not having a strong father figure in her life. Stella reports that she enjoys participating in hookup culture, but misses the comfort of having a partner. Lastly, Stella does apply for jobs through online platforms, but when she does not get a response, she shuts down. For her, this means crying until she falls asleep at any point in the day.
Although Stella is struggling within, she does have many examples of protective factors or examples of support and hope in her life. Stella calls her mother every day to check in, which brings her a lot of comfort. And her mother did mention on their most recent phone call that her brother has a connection in Boston that works in Stella's field, and he may be able to help her find work. If this pans out well, she will most likely be able to sustain herself and slowly pay off her debt. Stella's apartment building also has a free gym, which she's interested in trying out to help build back up her self-esteem and to meet other residents. Stella also enjoys reading and is very intellectual, and she did recently pick up a book at the local library about moving on after a breakup, and she plans to read this before bed instead of going on social media. Stella is also aware of her bad habits and wants to change her lifestyle, which represents why she has chosen to seek counseling. Stella's key concerns include finding belonging in her new city, supporting herself financially while dealing with her mother's health struggles, and overcoming bad habits that may have originated from depression. She is seeking counseling to better understand herself in order to connect easier with others and discover new coping mechanisms to help her reach her full potential. She hopes to work through her mental health struggles that have arisen from her certain circumstances.
The first theoretical framework that we have decided to use for Stella's treatment is behavioral therapy. From a behavioral perspective, the difficulties that Stella is presenting can be interpreted as learned behaviors that are reinforced and therefore maintained. Her feelings of loneliness, anxiety, low self-esteem, and overall emotional distress is managed through maladaptive behaviors such as avoidance behaviors like staying in bed, not applying to jobs, and not socializing with friends or attempting to make new ones. Negative reinforcement through excessive shopping and drinking to temporarily relieve emotions of stress and anxiety. Positive reinforcement through receiving attention and validation from men casually to temporarily relieve feelings of loneliness, and maladaptive coping mechanisms such as constant social media scrolling to engage in self comparison and keeping tabs on people in her life that no longer serve her, such as her ex boyfriend. In behavioral therapy, the focus is on which behaviors are contributing to and maintaining Stella's anxiety, stress, and self worth. Starting with long-term goals, one of the goals Stella should set is to reduce her anxiety and depressive symptoms and engaging in healthy, functional daily routines and habits. Secondly, Stella should increase adaptive coping strategies to manage her feelings of anxiety and loneliness, the stress of finding a job, and the struggle of transition to living independently for the first time in her life. A final long-term goal would be to develop Stella's self-efficacy and self-reliance in handling her finances responsibly, finding a job, and developing healthy social relationships in Boston. As for short-term goals, Stella will work on implementing healthy habits that target each of her limiting behaviors and reduce the impact on her life and well-being. These goals include establishing a consistent morning and evening routine at least 4 to 5 days a week to establish productivity and a sense of control in a stage for life that feels chaotic, reducing online shopping episodes to once a week or less over the course of a few weeks to maintain financial stability and feelings of guilt, reducing her screen time to no more than 3 hours a day and engaging in healthy behavior outside of her apartment, such as going to the gym, reading a book, walking in the park, etc., at least 3 times a week to reduce her time spent in the house engaging in self-sabotaging and comparing behaviors, and replace it with productive behaviors that are physically and emotionally beneficial. Applying to at least 3 jobs a week until she is offered a position to hold herself accountable and taking control of her career, and developing healthy coping strategies such as journaling, going to the gym, or calling her mother or home friends when she feels like engaging in impulsive behaviors.
While in therapy, Stella is expected to actively participate in sessions through practicing coping skills and engaging in role plays with the therapist to better understand behavioral triggers. She will also have to complete assigned homework outside of sessions. A core concept of behavior therapy is that in order for behaviors to be changed, work needs to be actively happening in real life. Stella needs to take initiative in dealing with her issues through changing her behaviors, not just talking about them. Also, this homework could include tracking her behaviors and triggers, such as the amount of money that she spends per week, the number of boys that she is hooked up with, or the hours she spends on Instagram or TikTok. Over time, the reduction in these numbers could serve as a reinforcement to continue positive reduction behaviors. Finally, Stella needs to be able to enter therapy with an open mind. Therapy will be tough and force her to participate in behaviors she may not be comfortable in, but in order to change her maladaptive coping mechanisms and behaviors, she needs to be willing to try new routines and actions. It is clear that she wants to change, but nothing can be done unless she works through the discomfort. In behavior therapy, the counselor functions as a coach and a guide, helping Stella set goals that change her behavior but hold her accountable for her actions and also provide reinforcement to encourage her to continue working on her behavior. The therapist should conduct a behavioral assessment to better understand the origins of Stella's behaviors, determine which path of treatment would be the most beneficial for her, and to track her progress as she continues treatment.
As for Stella's treatment, we, as Stella's counselors, would first do a behavioral assessment. Through this, we can have a greater understanding of the triggers of Stella's behaviors utilizing the ABC model, which goes through the antecedent, behavior, and consequence chain. After this is done, there are multiple methods of treatment that could be beneficial to her case. One method of treatment could be utilizing reinforcement strategies. Since reinforcement rewards positive behavior, Stella can choose a reward for herself, such as getting a sweet treat or engaging in a relaxing activity after she completes one of her goals, such as finishing a job application or staying off her phone for a set amount of time. By giving her something to look forward to after engaging in a reduction of a behavior she was so used to, Stella's maladaptive behaviors will slowly decrease. Additionally, we would also provide positive feedback when Stella makes progress as a method of reinforcement, since receiving confirmation that she is making changes will further influence her to engage in functional behaviors.
Another treatment method could be exposure therapy. By slowly working up on small tasks, Stella will be exposed to tasks she typically avoids and become used to them. For example, since Stella wants to make more friends but is worried about being rejected, she could try talking to someone that she sees at the gym, park, or any public space. After that, she could try inviting them to grab a coffee or lunch. Ideally, Stella would become more comfortable in speaking to people that she does not know in hopes that it will reduce her feelings of loneliness in Boston. Exposure therapy puts her in a potentially awkward, uncomfortable, or anxiety inducing situation, but it will force her to learn how to work through it. It is also very important to implement a course of action in case Stella tries to relapse in any of her maladaptive behaviors. If she feels the urge to shop, drink, or isolate, she can have a plan of action that makes her feel better that does not involve behaviors that she is trying to get away from. This could include doing a face mask, going for a walk, turning off her phone, reading a book, or any other leisure activity she enjoys to lower the chances of her engaging in maladaptive behaviors when she is having a lonely night or feeling discouraged about her job search. Additionally, it would be beneficial for her to lean on her friends and family. She has a strong relationship with her mother and her home friends, so a quick phone call to vent and talk about her feelings could be cathartic and make it less likely for her to turn to her negative behaviors. The second theory that we have chosen to apply to Stella's situation is person-centered because we feel that the foundations of this theory can be directly applied to Stella's situation, and the therapy sessions that come from this theory would definitely be beneficial for her. For example, person-centered therapy emphasizes that individuals have an innate self-actualizing tendency, or in other words, a natural drive towards growth, self-acceptance, and higher functioning. Concepts like low self-worth, incongruence, or disconnection from self can interrupt the process of self-actualization. Stella's isolation, anxiety, impulse spending, and need for validation from others represents incongruence between how she sees herself and who she truly wants to be. Stella views herself as inadequate and incapable in her adult life, but wants to be successful, independent, and confident. Furthermore, having an older brother who is very successful and is constantly being praised by her mother may have contributed to Stella's conditions of worth, which connect to external validation, prompting her to compare herself to others, engage in hookups, and shop for relief. Lastly, Stella does not trust her own capacity to cope with her major life transition, but can work through it by meeting her emotional needs and lessening her disconnection from self through person-centered therapy sessions, especially if they consist of empathetic understanding, unconditional positive regard, and genuineness. In terms of therapeutic goals, it would be a goal for Stella to increase self-acceptance and reduce self-criticism so that she can feel worthy on her own without the need for external validation. She would also strengthen her trust in her own decision-making so that she can better her finances, her relationships, and her career goals. She would also strive to reduce incongruence by aligning her feelings and needs with how she presents herself to the world. She would develop greater emotional awareness and confront her grief from the breakup, her anxiety about moving to Boston, and how she feels about her loneliness. Specific goals for Stella may look like setting a time to get out of bed every day, practicing self-care routines, creating a realistic budget, and replacing binge drinking with productive activities such as reading, going to the gym, and then also she would need to make a plan for job searching. Okay. In person centered therapy, the client or Stella's role would be to be open to honestly talking about her feelings and exploring herself. She must set the pace for what she wishes to discuss each session and how in depth she wishes to discuss it. She will have to reflect on her emotions surrounding different topics, even emotions that she may typically avoid or not want to confront. Stella will develop insight on the changes that she wants to make in her life and take ownership of her decisions in all kinds of areas. Overall, she will lead in her therapy experience as the counselor guides her towards self-discovery.
In Stella's case, the counselor must have unconditional positive regard, which may look like accepting and supporting Stella even when she discusses behaviors that she feels are shameful. The counselor will also be non directive, meaning not telling Stella what to do, but fostering the right environment for her to grow as a person. Empathy in sessions is essential for Stella to feel less alone and understood. The counselor will also show authentic reactions to mirror healthy emotional expression. Ultimately, the counselor is transparent, warm, and friendly, avoids advice giving or interpretation, focuses on present moment emotions, and highlights Stella's internal strengths. Starting with weeks 1 to 3 of Stella's treatment, we will establish the client counselor relationship. This will look like exploring Stella's sense of loneliness, shame, anxiety, and identity loss after the breakup, validating her difficulties adjusting to adulthood without pathologizing her, and beginning to foster trust and safety so Stella can express vulnerable emotions. Weeks 3 to 8 will consist of exploration in self concept and incongruence. The counselor will use reflective listening to help her clarify internalized comparisons, such as to her brother or her peers on social media, feelings of inadequacy related to job search setbacks, longing for connection versus behaviors that leave her feeling empty, what independence and adulthood mean to her, and times where she acts from fear versus authentic desire. During weeks 8 to 12, we would encourage exploration of impulses such as spending, hookups, or drinking with curiosity rather than self shame, help Stella notice moments when she is coping well or showing growth, reinforce her autonomy in decision making, and explore feelings behind avoidance, such as not applying to jobs when she is afraid of rejection. In further sessions, as Stella increases self awareness, we will gently support her in building routines through self care, reading before bed, or using the gym, initiating healthier social connections, approaching the job search with more self compassion, continuing to reflect positive changes she notices in herself. We will also highlight the strengths she has developed, such as resilience, emotional insights, coping skills, financial responsibility, and relationship boundaries, and support her in identifying early warning signs when she begins slipping into old patterns. Adlerian therapy would be another beneficial framework for Stella because she struggles with feelings of inferiority and low self worth. Stella presents many impulsive and harmful behaviors such as overspending, social comparison, hooking up with random men, and so on, but in reality, these behaviors are attempts to gain control in her life as well as a sense of belonging. Adlerian theory posits that she is lacking in the three major life tasks of building friendships, establishing intimacy, and contributing to society through working, and these deficits are an indication that there is a serious imbalance in her life that could be detrimental if not attended to. By setting goals and bringing awareness to the faulty parts of her behaviors, Stella can evolve into a better version of herself and determine her style of living.
The therapeutic goals for Stella would be to increase her insight of her current lifestyle and the patterns that are present and also help her to understand how her family dynamics play a part in her current beliefs. Another goal would be for her to reduce feelings of inferiority by practicing more self-appraisal, guide Stella to discover her community where she can feel a sense of belonging and meaningfulness, shift her current self-sabotaging behaviors to more productive ones and healthier ones that align with her current values and future goals. And lastly, her goal would be to build on her confidence so that she has the courage to overcome obstacles that she faces without the instinct to avoid them.
Stella will collaborate with us and form a mutual relationship where both can work together to improve her current lifestyle. Stella will also have the responsibility of recognizing her own mistaken beliefs or destructive habits and disclosing them to the counselor so they can slowly start to change each one, starting with what is most severe, which in her case would be either her overspending habits or binge drinking. She should be ready to develop her psychological muscle by taking responsibility for her circumstances and also have the courage to try new things and refrain from her default behaviors.
In our approach as counselors, we will assist Stella in becoming aware of her faulty worldview and providing her a new cognitive map. We will also challenge Stella to identify her core fears, such as not being good enough, being alone, or regretting the past. It is our job as counselors to facilitate the development of Stella's preferred lifestyle and to push her to accomplish the things that she needs to get there.
To begin Stella's journey with Adlerian therapy, we would first establish the client-counselor relationship. This means that there is mutual respect and support that encourages Stella to be courageous and make changes in her life. It is important when establishing the relationship with Stella for us to be encouraging and highlight strengths even when she does not see them. For example, if Stella is ruminating on her failures, it would be helpful to mention that despite all of the hardships she has faced, she has managed to move to Boston on her own and persevere through her struggles. The next phase would be to assess Stella's psychological dynamics. In this portion of treatment, Stella would participate in a subjective interview and tell us her story. After her interview, we would ask her the question, which is, how would your life be different, and what would you be doing differently if you did not have this symptom or problem? This allows Stella to think about what she wants out of her life and can assist in the development of her goals. It would also be important to discuss the family constellation because looking at the family system can allow for us to get a better understanding of Stella's values and where her beliefs might have stemmed from. In her case, she grew up with a brother who was more successful and constantly praised, which created an environment where she felt like she was never good enough and translated into her need to be successful in her career. Additionally, her father's absence most likely contributed to her desire to seek out male validation, and her boyfriend cheating on her further reinforced the belief that she was unworthy of stable love. Finally, when her mother was diagnosed with cancer yet still wanted to provide financially, Stella felt the need to prove herself and be independent. Examining these dynamics within the family system can help a lot with explaining Stella's current behaviors and thoughts. Additionally, early recollections or vivid memories from childhood that serve as a projective method to examine one's personal beliefs could also be useful in her case. By talking about memories of times where she compared herself to her brother, felt unseen when trying to do something, or tried to get male attention, we can better understand how she perceives the world and herself. Finally, identifying mistaken beliefs about herself would also be helpful in increasing Stella's awareness. Stella's private logic might tell her that she's failing if she does not achieve perfection, that she's behind in life if others are ahead, and that she needs someone in order to feel wanted. So our job is to help her shift these mistaken beliefs into more realistic ones, such as, I can grow at my own pace, my value is not determined by being chosen, I can create a life of my own, and more. These perspective changes can help Stella's self-esteem increase and give her control of her life.
The third phase of treatment for Stella would be encouraging self-understanding and insight. In this stage, we would help Stella understand why she engages in particular patterns and we would connect them to her early memories, lifestyle, and personal beliefs. In regards to her feelings of inferiority, Stella's tendency to compare herself to others is a result of growing up in a household with a high-achieving brother who received constant praise. As for her need to seek male validation, this is a result of her non-existent relationship with her father that results in a lack of a prominent parental figure, combined with the betrayal by her ex-boyfriend. The counselor can help Stella look deeper into this behavior and explore how she perceives her self worth based on the attention that she receives. When it comes to her impulsive behaviors like spending money and suddenly moving to an unfamiliar city, these are connected to her feelings of control and self perception, as she has recently experienced a lot of instability in her life. We can help Stella look deeper into this behavior and explore how she perceives her self worth based on the attention that she receives. When it comes to her impulsive behaviors like spending money or suddenly moving to an unfamiliar city, these are connected to her feelings of control and self perception, as she has recently experienced a lot of instability in her life. We can help her see that these spontaneous actions can actually cause harm down the road, despite temporarily giving her a sense of relief. Finally, her tendency to become avoidant when it comes to experiencing failure in things such as a job application or making friends stems from her false belief that she cannot handle pressure well. We can help her understand that her shutting down is a strategy that causes her to avoid rejection instead of moving away from it. In the final phase, Stella will work with us to establish first, second, and third order changes. Her first change will be something surface level, such as reading a book at night instead of going to the bar. This change in routine will be small and might feel mundane to Stella, but it is the first step in recognizing what she does as a result of her motivations. The second order change will be more profound and on a larger scale than the first order change. Stella will understand why she feels the need to go to the bar. It may be because she longs for connection, wants to socialize, or feels the need for the relief that may come from drinking alcohol. Stella will slowly start to recognize these whys and work on finding new strategies to fulfill them. Since she has started to read the book, the next step could be to engage with others in a local book club or even on an online forum. These actions will still follow her motivations, but they are healthier than social drinking. In Adlerian theory, the third change usually pertains to an even larger scale, such as transforming Stella's view on life. Stella may realize that she wants to live a healthier lifestyle in general because it helps her feel better in all different aspects. She won't even think about going to the bar anymore because reading and sharing her ideas with others is what brings her true, genuine happiness. As Stella begins to make these changes in her lifestyle, we as counselors should be encouraging her and motivating her to continue to incrementally work on herself. Since Stella lacks in feeling self sufficient and empowered, we as counselors should serve as an outlet of support to lift her up. Highlighting strengths that Stella does not see in herself and normalizing the occurrence of setbacks can help in shifting her worldview and make her more confident in her own capabilities. And it will also help her to develop a healthier and more fulfilling lifestyle for herself.
The final therapeutic framework that we have decided to use to treat Stella is existential therapy. Existential therapy is a philosophical approach that focuses on themes such as morality, meaning, freedom, responsibility, anxiety, relatedness, and loneliness, and overall just trying to understand what it means to be human. Existentialism assumes that humans are free and therefore we are responsible for our choices and actions. Instead of viewing disorder as a disease, existentialism sees our responses as meaningful and intentional to how a person is living their life. The main goals of therapy is to increase client awareness, encourage authentic living, and help clients create their own meaning when faced with uncertainty. Stella's case exhibits many themes of existentialism. To start, Stella clearly exerted her use of freedom by moving to Boston, but has struggled to be authentic or remain true to herself. She's overwhelmed by the responsibilities of finances, searching for a job, and the transition to independence that she has begun to exhibit avoidance tendencies such as shutting down because she has realized that her actions have real consequences. Additionally, Stella is living her life inside what existentialism calls an existential vacuum. This means that she's living a meaningless, hollow life. Stella experienced many sharp transitions suddenly, such as her long term boyfriend breaking up with her after cheating and moving to Boston to reinvent herself, but she lacks any real purpose in Boston. Her overspending and hookup habits speak to her desire to potentially fill a void and try to give her some purpose, but because they are not fulfilling her in any way, she feels as though she's lacking meaning in her life. Stella is also very isolated, and even though she still keeps in touch with her mother, she has no relationship with her dad, is overshadowed by a more successful brother, and is disconnected from her peers. According to existential therapy, one must be able to feel comfortable and love themselves when they are alone, or else they will not be able to connect with and develop relationships with others. When one can identify and utilize their own strengths, the relationships they have with others become more fulfilling and not desperate or to fill a void. Stella does not have a stable, authentic community in Boston, and it is clear that she is struggling with many insecurities at the moment. Therefore, she will have trouble finding a community until she learns to be confident and take control of her life. Finally, Stella exhibits feelings of anxiety surrounding her future as an unemployed postgrad young adult in an unfamiliar city, as well as guilt about leaving her mother after receiving a cancer diagnosis and wanting to be independent. To some, these feelings might seem as just symptoms that need to be managed, but to an existential therapist, these are actually signals that something in her life needs attending to and a change in direction is required to reorient. In summary, existential therapy can assist Stella in shifting from simply surviving her circumstances to actively shaping a life that is rooted in authenticity and meaning. Okay, that was it. Now time for goals. Okay. Stella's goals in existential therapy are centered on helping her develop a more authentic relationship with herself, others, and the world around her by confronting the conflicts of meaninglessness, freedom, and anxiety that is limiting her full potential. In the short term, therapy aims to increase Stella's awareness of the ways she has been avoiding responsibility for the decisions she has made in her own life, such as emotional withdrawal when she faces failure or relying on the validation of others to define her identity and self worth. Another important goal would be to bring Stella's existential anxiety to her attention and recognize that even though it can be daunting to acknowledge, it is a normal emotional response to be a young adult navigating uncertainty, transitions in romantic, familial, and platonic relationships, and developing an identity. By shifting her mindset of anxiety being a notification of necessary reorientation rather than a threat that needs to be eradicated can help her pinpoint where she needs to grow. Stella would also work on her inauthenticity in therapy, such as false beliefs of who she thinks she should be based on her family's pride in her brother, or thinking she is not capable of landing a job because she keeps getting rejected. As for long term goals, Stella should be constructing a meaningful life that reflects her personal values and goals rather than the desires and pressures of others. By taking control of her life and living the way she wants to, it gives her a sense of intention and freedom that she clearly wants but is having trouble developing. Methods of reconstructing her life include making decisions that benefit her even if they provoke feelings of anxiety, or confronting isolation through finding and fostering meaningful, authentic, platonic, and romantic relationships. A final long term goal for Stella would be to embrace the fact that she has the freedom to shape her circumstances and identity moving forward. She should be able to realize that she will be constantly evolving and facing conflict, and once she takes control of her life, she will be able to live it to the fullest extent possible. The final therapeutic framework that we have decided to use to treat Stella is existential therapy. Existential therapy is a philosophical approach that focuses on themes such as morality, meaning, freedom, responsibility, anxiety, relatedness, and loneliness, and overall just trying to understand what it means to be human. Existentialism assumes that humans are free and therefore we are responsible for our choices and actions. Instead of viewing disorder as a disease, existentialism sees our responses as meaningful and intentional to how a person is living their life. The main goals of therapy is to increase client awareness, encourage authentic living, and help clients create their own meaning when faced with uncertainty. Stella's case exhibits many themes of existentialism. To start, Stella clearly exerted her use of freedom by moving to Boston, but has struggled to be authentic or remain true to herself. She's overwhelmed by the responsibilities of finances, searching for a job, and the transition to independence that she has begun to exhibit avoidance tendencies such as shutting down because she has realized that her actions have real consequences. Additionally, Stella is living her life inside what existentialism calls an existential vacuum. This means that she's living a meaningless, hollow life. Stella experienced many sharp transitions suddenly, such as her long term boyfriend breaking up with her after cheating and moving to Boston to reinvent herself, but she lacks any real purpose in Boston. Her overspending and hookup habits speak to her desire to potentially fill a void and try to give her some purpose, but because they are not fulfilling her in any way, she feels as though she's lacking meaning in her life. Stella is also very isolated, and even though she still keeps in touch with her mother, she has no relationship with her dad, is overshadowed by a more successful brother, and is disconnected from her peers. According to existential therapy, one must be able to feel comfortable and love themselves when they are alone, or else they will not be able to connect with and develop relationships with others. When one can identify and utilize their own strengths, the relationships they have with others become more fulfilling and not desperate or to fill a void. Stella does not have a stable, authentic community in Boston, and it is clear that she is struggling with many insecurities at the moment. Therefore, she will have trouble finding a community until she learns to be confident and take control of her life. Finally, Stella exhibits feelings of anxiety surrounding her future as an unemployed postgrad young adult in an unfamiliar city, as well as guilt about leaving her mother after receiving a cancer diagnosis and wanting to be independent. To some, these feelings might seem as just symptoms that need to be managed, but to an existential therapist, these are actually signals that something in her life needs attending to and a change in direction is required to reorient. In summary, existential therapy can assist Stella in shifting from simply surviving her circumstances to actively shaping a life that is rooted in authenticity and meaning. Okay, that was it. Now time for goals. Okay. Stella's goals in existential therapy are centered on helping her develop a more authentic relationship with herself, others, and the world around her by confronting the conflicts of meaninglessness, freedom, and anxiety that is limiting her full potential. In the short term, therapy aims to increase Stella's awareness of the ways she has been avoiding responsibility for the decisions she has made in her own life, such as emotional withdrawal when she faces failure or relying on the validation of others to define her identity and self-worth. Another important goal would be to bring Stella's existential anxiety to her attention and recognize that even though it can be daunting to acknowledge, it is a normal emotional response to be a young adult navigating uncertainty, transitions in romantic, familial, and platonic relationships, and developing an identity. By shifting her mindset of anxiety being a notification of necessary reorientation rather than a threat that needs to be eradicated can help her pinpoint where she needs to grow. Stella would also work on her inauthenticity in therapy, such as false beliefs of who she thinks she should be based on her family's pride in her brother, or thinking she is not capable of landing a job because she keeps getting rejected. As for long-term goals, Stella should be constructing a meaningful life that reflects her personal values and goals rather than the desires and pressures of others. By taking control of her life and living the way she wants to, it gives her a sense of intention and freedom that she clearly wants but is having trouble developing. Methods of reconstructing her life include making decisions that benefit her even if they provoke feelings of anxiety, or confronting isolation through finding and fostering meaningful, authentic, platonic, and romantic relationships. A final long term goal for Stella would be to embrace the fact that she has the freedom to shape her circumstances and identity moving forward. She should be able to realize that she will be constantly evolving and facing conflict, and once she takes control of her life, she will be able to live it to the fullest extent possible.
Within the framework of existential therapy, Stella's role is one that is active, reflective, and experimentative. Stella is not someone to be fixed, but rather a whole, capable human being facing the universal challenges of existence. Her responsibility within therapy is to be courageous and engage with the deeper questions underneath her symptoms, and to explore how these struggles reflect existential themes such as freedom, responsibility, meaning, identity, and isolation. Stella is encouraged to participate authentically by examining the choices she has made and the meanings she has unconsciously created around independence, romantic relationships, and achievement. This involves becoming aware of the beliefs she holds about herself, like, I am not as successful as my brother, as well as how she protects herself from pain through avoidance, impulsivity, and over reliance on external validation. Stella's role includes learning to tolerate uncomfortable emotions like uncertainty, grief, disappointment, or the fear of inadequacy, rather than escaping them through social media, casual sex, spending, or shutting down emotionally. In existential therapy, Stella is also asked to bring honesty into the room. This requires vulnerability and acknowledging the ways her patterns have been both comforting and harmful. Stella's role includes examining how she contributes to the dissatisfaction in her life and recognizing her lived experiences as opportunities for growth, meaning making, and self definition. Ultimately, Stella's role is to become an active participant in shaping her own existence. She is asked to reclaim agency by making choices that reflect her deeper values rather than acting from impulse, desperation, or fear of being alone. Stella is invited to move forward towards a more authentic way of living, one that is grounded in self awareness, responsibility, and the courage to define her own path. When applying existential theory to our therapy sessions, our role as counselors involves being deeply present and authentic assistance on Stella's journey towards self understanding. Rather than acting as experts who diagnose or direct, we serve as facilitators of exploration, helping Stella discover the existential themes within her distress. We as counselors must be compassionate, honest, and collaborative, as these are essential qualities for helping Stella confront her pain and uncertainty. We will create a therapeutic space that encourages Stella to explore the meanings she associates with independence, womanhood, success, and romantic love. Because Stella often feels lost, inadequate, and disappointed in herself, We have to work to validate these feelings while also helping her examine how she interprets these experiences and what assumptions she has internalized. We also have to gently challenge Stella to consider how she may be living in inauthentic ways. For example, chasing fleeting validation, idealizing relationships, or defining herself through comparison, while supporting her and recognizing her capacity to make more intentional, value driven choices. From an existential standpoint, us counselors do not aim to eliminate Stella's anxiety, but instead help her understand it as a natural part of transition, loss, and growth. We help Stella identify when her anxiety signals the need for change or self-reflection rather than something that she must escape. We are also responsible for modeling the authenticity and self-awareness Stella is working toward by being honest, transparent, and fully present without hiding behind professional distance. Additionally, Jen and I will help Stella face existential givens such as loneliness, mortality, for example, her mother's cancer, freedom of choice, and her search for meaning. Stella's patterns are addressed compassionately as attempts to cope with existential discomfort. Us counselors help her see that while these strategies temporarily relieve pain, they may also move her further from the authentic, meaningful life that she deserves. Overall, our role is to guide Stella towards heightened awareness, deeper self insight, and the courage to engage fully with her life, even the parts that feel frightening, disappointing, or uncertain.
During the first few sessions with Stella, treatment will focus on developing her sense of awareness. As her counselors, we would help her identify the existential themes in her life, such as her struggle to find purpose through a job in Boston and her trouble processing her emotions regarding her relationship with her father and ex-boyfriend. Instead of immediately trying to find solutions to her problems, we will help her identify more accurate feelings that are associated with these themes, such as guilt, anxiety, or loneliness. It is also important to help Stella become more tolerable of existential anxiety by normalizing it and getting her to sit with it even if it makes her uncomfortable. Through techniques such as meaning centered dialogue, which is dialogue about one's values and freedoms that help them understand what they find meaningful, and reflective questioning, which is asking deep questions about topics such as the meaning of life, one's purpose, and mortality, we would be able to foster Stella's self understanding and personal growth. We also explore Stella's patterns surrounding her responsibilities with particular We would also explore Stella's patterns surrounding her responsibilities with particular focus on how she makes decisions based on external forces, such as wanting to be successful so she can match up with her brother, rather than wanting to be successful for herself. The goal of the short-term time frame is to highlight any behaviors or thought processes that are not serving Stella and limiting her ability to be as authentic and free as possible.
Mid treatment and existential therapy represents the phase where Stella has developed enough trust, insight, and emotional tolerance to begin deep and transformative work. The task of this phase is to support her in confronting existential concerns more directly, integrating insights into everyday life, and developing the capacity to make value driven decisions with greater courage. A major mid treatment focus is expanding Stella's insight beyond symptoms and behaviors into the existential dimensions underlying them. This involves freedom and responsibility. Stella begins to understand that she is not reacting to life circumstances, but actively shaping her experience through her choices. This includes recognizing that overspending, avoidance, and casual sexual encounters reflect choices that protect her from emotional turmoil. Confronting the anxiety that comes with recognizing she is responsible for her own financial decisions, her emotional regulation, her professional path, and her relational patterns. Addressing her tendency to externalize responsibility and helping her internalize a sense of empowered agency. Also, existential isolation. Stella begins to explore the difference between loneliness and existential isolation being the unavoidable truth that no one can live her life for her. Mid treatment helps her recognize that her reliance on hookups and validation from men temporarily wards off existential isolation, but ultimately intensifies it. Understand that her feelings of isolation in Boston reflect both situational loneliness and deeper struggles with her identity and purpose. Begin developing the capacity to be alone without feeling empty. Lastly, identity and authenticity. Stella begins confronting deeply held assumptions about who she should be, for example, successful,
fashionable, confident, or in a relationship, and she begins exploring who she actually is in her current life stage. This involves breaking down the idealized adult identity she imagined in college. It includes exploring how much of her self concept was shaped by external validation, for example, from her peers, from Grayson, and from her mother's comparisons of her to her brother. And she begins identifying patterns where she lives inauthentically to gain approval or avoid discomfort. Mid treatment focuses on helping Stella transform her newfound insights into practical change. Existential work at this stage becomes more dialectical, and Stella becomes more aware of the moment she feels overwhelmed and begins to shut down, overshop, or seek validation. She will learn how to pause and name the emotion, engage with discomfort rather than escaping it, and replace reactive behaviors with grounding practices. Stella also begins practicing more intentional relationship patterns. Stella begins taking small, intentional steps towards managing her finances, job search, and self care routines. And at this stage, the goal is not perfection, but ownership. Additionally, a central mid treatment theme is learning to stay with emotions rather than running away from them. Stella will develop a greater capacity to sit with grief about her breakup and the loss of the life that she imagined. She will increase her tolerance for uncertainty about her future and her ability to feel moments of sadness, shame, or loneliness without spiraling into avoidance or self blame. The emotional expansion is essential groundwork for long term change. Mid treatment is also the time when Stella begins rewriting her own personal narrative. In the long term, existential therapy involves helping Stella create a deeply meaningful, self directed life. Although this is not necessarily about removing symptoms, they do often diminish as her authenticity increases. The long term phase focuses on identity solidification, value driven living, and ongoing awareness of existential concerns as they arise in life's challenges. The long term goal would be for Stella to develop a grounded sense of self. This includes Stella gaining clarity about her own values, desires, strengths, vulnerabilities, and aspirations. She no longer defines herself in comparison to her brother, her peers, or her former boyfriend. She will become more confident in her own path. By living in alignment with her values, Stella begins engaging in behaviors that reflect her authentic identity.
In the multicultural aspect, Stella's identities, racial, gender, cultural, and sexual, all play a role in who she is today. They have also shaped her experiences thus far in life. Her identities provide both challenges and opportunities. As a 23-year-old white heterosexual woman from a middle class background, Stella possesses many privileges that prevent her from having to overcome systemic barriers. Her age, however, does present some obstacles as the transition to adulthood exposes Stella to social pressure, vulnerability, and high expectations. Also, identifying as female, Stella's attitude around men, such as feeling unloved after the breakup and seeking validation through intimacy, may suggest the effects of gendered socialization, where women are conditioned to prioritize relationships, compete for male validation, and be emotional caretakers. Her tendency to spend large amounts of money on products and clothes may also be a result of the pressure on women to maintain their appearance and present their best selves to others at all times.
Additionally, Stella may feel the need to work harder for her role in the workplace due to systemic inequalities between female and male employees. She may not be taken as seriously in the workforce or be paid her worth. Another obstacle that should be considered is that although Stella has had the privilege of growing up in a middle-class, financially stable family, she must now learn to understand finances on her own. Her limited knowledge of budgeting and affording her lifestyle definitely presents a struggle. Overall, Stella does have many protective factors that will assist her in becoming her best self through therapy, but her identities and how they may inhibit her should still be recognized.